But if you want to ride, you got to ride it like you find and get your ticket at the station for the Rock Island Line.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Corn Country Rails. I'm Tony Bowen, and I've had a few days off from our school winter break to get a few projects done on the layout. I always find that Christmas break and summer vacations is the best time for me to get some real progress done on some of the layout. Didn't get as much as I would have liked to have done, taken care of off my list. However, part of that is due to our negative 12 degrees, plus with the wind chill makes it about minus 32 degrees outside. So there's a few projects I wanted to get done, but the idea of being outside in the table saw in the driveway or in the garage just didn't sound all that appealing. So I'm gonna have to wait for warmer days for some of my other projects. But thought I'd give just kind of an update of what are a few things I did over the winter break before I head back to school. So I'll show you around just a few of the small projects I've been working on. One of the smaller projects I was working on is I've been using the Micro-Mart 5-section waybill boxes. My crew that comes to operate seems to like them. I like them. But the one thing I always find is when we start off a session, I'll have a lot of the Rick's picks at every location, and by the end of a session, they're all gone. So I simply just drilled little holes on each side of the box in hopes that when a crew member is done, they'll remember to put their pick back at that box in that location, so when the next crew comes along, they have something for uncoupling the locomotives. So that was a very quick and simple little project. However, when you have about 20 waybill boxes along your layout, it took quite a bit of time to get them all done. Building a layout for me is fun, but I always want to enjoy it and share it with other operators. And so last year when I was having operating sessions, I always sent out an email to my crew asking what went well, what didn't go so well. And after having several sessions, we basically said, you know, get away from the Micro-Mart, having to write out all the train orders, and basically type out what each train has to do at a typical session. So I took their advice. I typed up 14 train orders for the trains that normally work during a typical session, laminated them. They're small enough that they can fit right in the pockets of the Micro-Mart locomotive cards or a waybill, and essentially all the work they need to do for a session is written right there. Then when it comes time to assigning crews their train, they simply can go up to the pockets on the upper staging yard of my layout. I've got the train orders there. I've got the DCC address for the locomotive, and then their waybills are right there. And so then they can take their train right out of the upper staging to get started. So hopefully when I have my operating session in January, that will be a big help. I will also be replacing these red and blue basically slips with ones that actually say westbound and eastbound when it comes time to classifying cars in the larger staging area of my railroad. Plus I have 2 locals that go out of here, and they will have green cards that basically identify them as the local for Homestead or the local train for Grinnell. And then I plan on just using some laminated ones that'll just be in a spare pocket along with the bad order slips that in whatever track they need to use them in, they're available there. So this is not something I did over the winter break, but I will be very curious as I host my first operating session in a few weeks, how this will work. I installed this at the end of summer in August and had in my own mind basically how I thought the railroad should be divided up, but I wanted to do a couple operating sessions first to see where I thought would be the correct power districts for the railroad actually worked out. And luckily what I thought in my mind worked out very well, and so I went ahead and put in the circuit breakers for the power districts. Basically have the layout broken up into 4 different districts. All the other wiring is back behind the board that goes out into the layout room. The other thing, I liked having this extra space on the board because I was watching a clip from a gentleman who, on Tony's Train Exchange, actually put in a on-off switch so that he literally could shut off each one of these power districts. So if in Power District 1 he was doing scenery work, he could shut it off but still have power to the other districts of his railroad. So far, just with myself running the layout, this has worked like a dream. So my hope is in January, when I host my op session, that it will work flawlessly also. Over the winter break, I was able to get a little modeling done. These two structures I picked up 2 years ago at a train show in La Crosse. They were both at a used table. I think I gave maybe $10 for both of them. The white building is a model power building that I cut down the center and basically made it for a backdrop building. And then the two Rick's silos and elevator were pretty busted up, so I put them back together and then bought some K&S piping and bent it down to feed into the silos, and then obviously one out to the track. And then for the chute, I basically used just some shrink tubing, fed it up on one end, and then just got the soldering iron nice and hot, and it just shrunk right onto it. So when a grain hopper is spotted underneath there, it's just inches above where it should be. So pretty simple. Still needs a lot of work in these two structures, but right now I'm waiting on some decals before I can kind of doctor them up a little more. I was also very fortunate. My two daughters went in together and got me this grain silo kit from Faller. It is basically a German kit, but there were several parts I left off it to still give it that kind of Americanized look. And so when spring comes, I'll be able to take it out, give it a good airbrushing and weathering and that. But to complement the Walthers silo, it looks really nice. I'm thinking I may do the same thing with the K&S piping and actually come down from the co-op elevator and run it into the tops of those two silos. So that really kind of helps improve that scene. I was thinking also of getting a couple Rick's just silos and putting on this side also. And this elevator will basically be the key piece for this small town up here. One of the big projects is starting to do ballast work on the lower deck. I basically have from the east end of Marengo all the way to South Amana ballasted, and I was very pleased with that. However, I really wanted to extend that further over the Christmas break, and so I was able to get all the way down where the tracks go over the Milwaukee Road. That I had already done, and it had stopped basically right here. Well, over the Christmas break, I was able to get the rest of Homestead ballasted. And this took about 3 days because I did the main line, which is right here in the center. And then once it was cured and dried, I went back and I did basically the sidings for the elevator, the coal dealer, the feed and seed, and then also this is where our local terminates. And so I was able to get that all ballasted. And then on the third day, I got the passing siding ballasted. So this is really kind of nice that from this point to the east end of Marengo, I can basically say I have about half of the lower deck ballasted. And so my plan would be to get more ballast work done either in the evenings or on the weekends, so that by springtime I could have the whole bottom deck of the layout ballast, and then hopefully can move on to some other scenery work. I've had a few people ask me about the Wiki Sticks foam road that I'm using. This is just one example. These pieces are just kind of floating. They're not adhered down. But so far, I'm really liking them. It's 1 millimeter thick. I already have it basically risen on cork underneath it. And by the time I put in my railroad grade crossings, the foam lays right up to it. And I have found so far that the white Sharpies that you could get at any hobby supply like Hobby Lobby or Michael's for making lines, the white shows up great. The yellow, however, does not. It just makes dark gray patches. However, I'm going to try the Tamiya tape and see if in time, if that won't work great for making lines, both the white and the yellow. But for 89 cents for a 12 by 18 inch sheet of foam that you literally can cut and shape any way you want, I have to say this is a great product. The big project that I did not get to was underneath the layout. I had hopes of putting paneling, or I should say plywood, on the front of these studs to basically hide all the stuff that's underneath, which is, you know, stuff for my girls, extra school items that my wife and I just don't need at the moment. However, when it became so cold, I thought going outside and using the table saw to finish off this underneath part of the layout might just be a project for a warmer day. And so once the plywood is cut, I mean, it's basically just nailing it up like studs to give this part of the layout more of a finished look. The inside part of the layout, my mother-in-law had made these drapes for me. And so right now I'm just using binder clips to hold them up, but essentially all of the drapes have a Velcro that she has already sewn on them, and so I'm hoping to get the Velcro tape and put it underneath the layout, and then these panels will just adhere to it underneath without the use of the binder clips. And so it will also store railroad slides, girls' toys that we're not getting rid of yet, and just other things that basically don't need to be seen all the time. But it'll give it a finished look also. So there you have it for my winter progress while I was away from school and some things I've done on the layout. I'd like to give a big shout out to two gentlemen that I am inspired by, and I'm not going to probably produce as many video clips as they do, but Joe Desmond and Mike Pfeiffer. I've truly enjoyed watching always their progress updates and that has inspired me to at least get something out of what I'm doing more than just photos, to let people know what I'm working on. So I thank those two gentlemen because you are an inspiration to those of us that are modelers. Not to say that my videos will be as great as yours, but it's something I can certainly work towards. So happy holidays and happy New Year's to everyone. And I hope to do an update again after my January operating session. So look for that to come out sometime towards the end of January. Thank you. Take care.